Welcome everyone to Overcome Podcast. Today we have a really good episode that I've been trying to make it happen for a long time. I'm glad it's happening now. Today we have someone that won the national championship in judo 14 times and was part of the USA Judo World Team twice, and now Gin Honor. So young and already teaching on your own dojo. Skyler Cummings, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I was reading a little bit about your dojo, and it's funny because the article that I was reading says 19 years old judo champion passing on her skills, open up this dojo. So young, and you change from be a full time athlete to be a coach. How was that?
It was definitely a big change. I had a lot of big goals from the young age in judo. So I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old with Olympic dreams and stuff like that. And I ended up getting onto like the senior judo scene in the country fairly early. I was 12 years old when I started fighting in
Oh
seniors.
wow!
So yeah, so I started really early fighting women instead of young girls. So I was doing that. So my last competition was right before COVID. I fought at one of the U.S. Nationals that was in November of 2019, and then March 2020 is obviously when COVID hit. So I haven't competed since before COVID. So during COVID, I ended up getting a job. There was no, I didn't have a place to train. So I ended up getting a job and ended up, while I was at my job, some guy came in and saw that I had a judo sweatshirt on. And he said that he had done judo and his brother had done judo. Well, come to find out, the guy that he was talking about, his brother, owned the building that my old judo club was out of when I was really. So they ended up coming to find out that that building was up for rent and all this stuff. So I ended up going to check it out, just kind of browsing options, and the place didn't end up working out. Just wasn't the proper fit for what I wanted to do if I ran a club. And on my way home from work one day, I ended up looking over, and there was a storefront for rent, and just kind of branched off from there. So it's probably about from when the idea first kind of sparked up, it was probably 8 months later where I finally opened.
And you open your dojo, kind of COVID was still going on, right?
Yes, I opened my dojo in November of 2020.
And so, well, you opened, but there were still restrictions.
Yes, so for the first probably 6 to 8 months, probably closer to 8 months, there were masks that were required. So uh, basically, we tried to take more mask breaks and that type of thing, more water breaks, just to try to keep things going. It ended up being a fairly decent time to open,
Really?
believe it or not. Yeah, so from a competitive standpoint, I think I really ended up getting quite a few people that never would have tried judo or wrestling or anything like that, because I do wrestling as well at my dojo. So there were quite a few athletes that were really natural athletes that I know for a fact would not have come to a sport like judo naturally on their own, um, without the pandemic, because all the other kid sports weren't going on. So people were looking for things to do. So I ended up getting quite a few kids that were very athletic that would have never done judo if that didn't happen. So I think it was actually a good time overall.
That's a very interesting perspective because you would think that people would be more skeptical about contact sport and everything because of the
Right.
pandemic. But and probably they would if you had done this in the beginning. But since you've done like towards the end, where
Right.
the vaccine was already available and people are also done with being at home all the time,
Right.
right? So I think I think you're right. It was a good timing. And how is it going so far? I mean, it looks like it's growing a lot, right?
Yeah, I'm growing fairly stably. Um, with it obviously during during different months. So in the summer, I get a little bit of a drop, and then it goes way up after the summer. And then when spring sports come around, it kind of goes down and then skyrockets right before summer, and then takes. So I have those trending numbers, but overall, I'm going up pretty much every month. And hopefully within the next couple of months, we can get over 100 students in total. I'm in an area that's not very populated. It's not like we're not in a city or anything, so it's very country. I'm out from the northeast of Connecticut, so it's not a very populated area. But for where I am, I think that my club is growing very, very well. And at this point, I already have the biggest club in Connecticut.
Wow.
So, yeah, the biggest club in Connecticut. Connecticut used to be very big in judo. Had one of the clubs that were the top in the country, and then over that was in the 90s, and then little by little just kind of disappeared. So,
and again, I'm extremely impressed by this spirit of opening up a business, and because it looks like it's you open on your own, right? It's just you, the owner.
yes, I opened on my own. I As it gets bigger, I'm probably going to end up adding different partners, and I have volunteer coaches and stuff like that right now. That basically what I do is my competitive athletes that are adults end up going back and helping the kids' classes, and so it works out very well right now. I did end up opening on my own originally, and so it's been a little over 2 years now that I've been open on my own.
Was this something that you had planned, or it just happened?
Not necessarily. So it's actually funny because I had a school project that, like, probably a year ago, I ended up finding from when I was in 6th grade, and it was like the whole project was basically plan your life out, and when you're 28, this is where you want to be in your life,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to it all out. And I went back and read it, and actually my goal job was to own a judo club. So
Oh,
I
wow.
I didn't even realize that until going back and looking at it about a year ago. But that was my goal when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and then when the opportunity actually arose, it was kind of out of the blue. And then I just ended up pursuing it, and I usually when I want to pursue something, it usually happens.
When you open and you started, I'm sure that you probably in the past you've done some classes, private class, so you already had experience coaching, right?
Yes, I pretty much every club I've gone to, I've assisted with classes and ran classes, coached at tournaments. So I've been coaching and helping kids and doing private lessons since I was probably about 14. So I started coaching really young, and it really helped me in my competitive career, because you don't realize what you don't know until you start actually teaching techniques. It just makes you understand judo so much better. And so it really did help me in understanding how things needed to be done and why I'm doing something a certain way. So now, only being 22, I've had 8 years of coaching experience, which I know very few people my age would have at this
Yep.
point. And I've never, obviously, until opening almost 3 years ago, 3 years in November. Obviously, until then, I didn't know what it was like to run it all on my own, but I had that experience.
And that's amazing. With 80 years of experience with only 22 years old, that's fantastic. And do you have students all over the range of from all the way from kids to like master level, or do you specific or is it more specific in a specific range?
I have kids that are as young as 3, all the way up to adults that are in their 60s. So I have a wide range, all different ages. My big crew right now, where I'm most populated, is my 9 to 14-year-old group. That's the biggest class I have right now, and obviously, depending on the seasons, it kind of changes. Sometimes my little kids class is a little bit big, but that's my big group right now, and quite a few of them go up into the adult class as well. So I have a good group in that range, but I have all different ages and in male, female, everything.
When it comes to training masters, like 40 and above, right? That never done judo, do you do the progression is different. I know I say that because I started judo after 40s,
Right.
and my body was just not ready to fall. It was not
Yeah.
ready to do a bunch of things that if you start as a kid, it becomes second nature. No big deal. So any type
Right.
of movement to me that requires a drop, it's always
Yep.
very tough. What is your advice for after 40s uh, people that really want to try out judo, and what to do to not get frustrated because things
Yep.
it feels like it takes forever to learn, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. No, so with a couple of my older students, I like to focus on with them on a lot of newaza. So obviously, I'm sure you know that in the judo community, you either go to a club and they do a lot of newaza or they never do it.
Hmm.
There's no between. So I feel like as a whole, my judo club does a lot of newaza compared to majority of judo clubs, especially in the country. So a lot of my older athletes love to do newaza just because it's very technical, but at the same time, it's very light on the body. Even when you're doing randori, it doesn't require a lot of hard, forceful falls or anything like that, obviously. So that's something that definitely lean towards. I do a lot of crash pad work. That way, there's not that hard hit of the body all the time. So a lot of crash pad work, a lot of newaza, as far as keeping your body up to par for doing judo. Um, but as far as being able to learn at a certain rate, watching a lot of video helps. A lot of video because even when something gets explained a certain way, it's a lot easier to be able to look at a video or see something and watch it over and over and over again, and maybe something will finally click. Because like you said, for if you have a kid, they are going to grow up in that athletic environment of judo, and if you start late, your body just doesn't naturally adapt to it. So a lot of shadow uchikomi, even shadow movement by yourself, a lot of stuff like even for that's for anybody, but especially for that masters group, it definitely helps a lot for being able to develop that movement and develop that technique.
That's a great tip for sure. Yeah, I love newaza because since I do jiu-jitsu, newaza is like second nature, right? So it's uh,
Yeah.
it's, it's very cool. um, the other thing that I was curious to ask about is this switch that you stopped competing in 2019. You were still in your prime, very young, lot of gas on your tank. You could have actually gone way more if you wanted to. How was to say I'm done competing and now I'm gonna be a business owner? I mean, it's kind of a big change. Most of the
Oh,
athletes that I know that switch from being an athlete to be a business owner, it was like down the road. They were literally retired after 30s, right? So how was for you?
it was tough originally, especially because especially at the beginning, it was almost, well, when we get out of COVID, I'm gonna still teeter with competing and stuff like that, and I always have the thought of even trying to start going back to competition just to feel it out and
Hmm.
see how it goes, and obviously that would have to be if I had a business partner and that type of thing. So it's always something I teeter with. It's something that it's kind of tough to gauge because I know that if I went back and to competing and trained hard and trained as hard as I always did, I know that I could easily get back on the circuit with a lot of work, obviously, but I know I could do it. Um, and it's just a matter of what do I want to pursue? Is it, do I want to pursue the coaching part of it, and by the time I'm 30, be a highly respected coach, or do I want to not start from square one, but have to? It's harder to it's a lot easier to stay in something and continue training and having that always working, but it's a lot harder to take that time off and then go right back to it. It's difficult, but I think that um, as of right now, I don't have any plans of competing again. I might at some point, but right now I don't think it's an option for the most part. I do think it helps me as a coach though, because I have a stronger bond with my athletes because I'm closer in age to them, so I know what they're feeling. I know the process. I've been on every scale of very recently, so I know what it's like in this day and age in judo to be an athlete coming up. And I also feel that like you can have a coach that's accomplished everything and done everything, but I feel like the best coaches are the ones that worked just as hard as those people but weren't able to accomplish their goals. I feel like those are the people that are able to support and push you more because they understand what it's like to put in that work and not get there, not accomplish their goal. So I think that I stand in a good position as a coach currently.
And clearly you are passionate about that. I've seen some of your videos, and that fulfillment of you see someone that you are coaching to succeed is probably as fulfilling as you winning. It's like you are winning, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that it might be even more fulfilling because if I were to do something, it's myself accomplishing that goal. I can have 20 people accomplish that goal and relive it and through with them 20 times over instead of just the one time where it's a dramatic uprise and then a downfall if it's yourself. But if you're doing it with other people and you can share that knowledge and help hundreds and hundreds of people, you can relive that moment over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I fully agree with that. But with this spirit and being so young, you probably continue to push yourself training. So you train every day. You train. I'm assuming that you train every day. But what is your regimen right now? Your training routine? Just to stay in shape and work out with your athletes.
I don't do a lot of randori with my athletes. I do newaza. Was doing a lot of tachiwaza randori, probably like a year ago, and but it seems like every single time I decide to do it, I end up getting hurt or something. So, I kind of put that because I still have that competitive edge of I have to get this, but my body's not what it was in full competitive mode, and I'm a lot smaller than I was. I don't have as much muscle, so it's a completely different feel with my body, and I haven't been able to get that back to that point. So I was doing randori probably a year ago with one of my higher level national athletes, and she's competing internationally now and stuff like that. And uh, she asked me to do a round with her, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go with you. And I ended up coming in for a technique and ended up getting caught and ended up posting my hand and ended up breaking my hand. So
Wow, really?
I ended up breaking my hand, and it seems like every single time I do tachiwaza randori, I end up hurting something. I ended up going to the USA Judo National Training Camp in December with one of my athletes, and I ended up doing newaza randori and grip fighting, and and held up very well surprisingly, but I definitely don't think I could have done tachiwaza randori all those rounds. I would have died.
Wow, this is impressive. So, is this something that when you were on your peak, you have to do randori, right? I mean, to be a competitive
Yeah.
athlete. So, Did you have a lot of injuries when you were competing?
Yeah, I dwindled with a lot of different injuries. One that kind of always lingered and to this day kind of bothers me are my hands. I got surgery on my hand twice. Um, Basically, my thumb dislocated probably about, and this was when I was like, it started when I was about 13 or 14, and it just kept dislocating and dislocating. I would put it back in by myself every tournament or every training camp or practice whenever it came out, and ended up getting surgery on it. And then came out from surgery, had a cast, did the whole 9 yards, and ended up just continuing to dislocate even after the surgery. My other one started to dislocate, so I just kind of swore off the surgery for it altogether and just started taping them ridiculously well to the point where they wouldn't move. So that was a big that was a big thing that carried over until I stopped competing. And even to this day, I'll open a door and it'll sublux, or it's just a lingering,
But
annoying
like
little injury.
knees, legs in general, shoulder, everything is
I
okay?
My knee, mainly my knee. So funny, not funny story, but kind of funny. So I ended up in 2017. I ended up in January. I was at a training camp and ended up hurting my knee, and immediately I knew something wasn't right. And I went for another round or two, and ended up realizing, wow, this isn't feeling well. Like something's really off. So I ended up taking my gi pants off and ended up seeing my knee was triple the size. And and just with the adrenaline, I didn't even realize how bad it was. So I trained on it for a couple of weeks, but I was going to Belgium and Paris like 3 weeks later. And then about a month after that was world junior or cadet world team trials for judo. So I had 3 big events coming up in that very short period of time, and then about 6 weeks later was senior national. So I had a schedule coming up, and I ended up taking a week off of back in January after I hurt my knee. I took about a week off, basically sitting completely, not walking, not doing anything. It was to the point where I'd walk and I would feel my like I'd feel something like drop where it was like bone to bone. It wasn't feeling well at all. It was really bad. So when I decided I was going to go to all this. I was going to go to Belgium. I was going to go to Paris. I was gone for 2 weeks, and then I was going to go to world cadet world team trials. That was a couple weeks later. So I ended up just learning how to tape my knee really well, and then put a brace over it, and then tape over the brace so that it was pretty much completely unstable or completely stable, and there was no movement whatsoever. And so I went to Belgium, could barely walk honestly for the training camp and the tournament. Went to Paris, could barely walk, did the training camp there, and then came back, and immediately I had to start training for cadet trials, and still I was going to doctor's appointments just so I could get an answer and figure out what was going on. And come to find out, I had broken my tibia and I tore my ACL. So,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
so I broke.
insane. And you were doing all that with
Yep,
this injury. That's
right. And then once I found that out, I went to Cadet World Trials and won. And so I ended up uh, basically after I won that division, I couldn't walk off the mat. I immediately walked off or stumbled off the mat and just plopped down, and because I couldn't really throw, I couldn't really do my best technique on the ground is sankaku. So I couldn't really do that very well. Couldn't really throw because it was my left knee, so it was my plant leg, and I do a lot of uchimatas and osotos, so it was very difficult for me to throw. So I had a long golden score match for my final match, and I remember all the referees coming over and being like, "Oh, you're really tired, huh?" And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not really. I'm tired, but I'm not that tired. I just can't walk." So for the rest of the trip, I remember getting piggybacks when we had to walk to a restaurant or whatever else because I could barely walk. I had to pull out because I was fighting cadet and junior, so the under 18 and the under 21 division, and the under 18 division was on the first day and the under 21 was on the second day. I had to pull out of the second day. Not that it didn't matter, but it just, what I needed to do for that tournament was done. So I decided to pull out, considering I couldn't really walk. But
That's insane. But that is something that I've seen athletes on that level. Their mental toughness is so in a different level that they just
oh,
go through this. And that gives me a segue for the question, because this is something that is very on you. How do you teach, or how do you transmit this type of mentality for your students to go through this? What is the talk to convince this that pain is part of this journey? They have to learn to deal with pain.
it's really difficult because it's something that you can develop, but it's not something that you can just put into somebody. It's something that somebody already has the trace of, but you have to instill in that. So I have athletes that have all the athletic ability in the world, but just don't have that. And as much as you can try to build that, it's never gonna build. And you can put in all the effort you can, but they have to be able to take that to an extent. But I'd say honestly, most people do have that, the building blocks of that. It's just being able to little by little add the blocks. It takes a long time, but after a couple of years, people will really start buying into that process and buying into the mentality and the mental game, and that there's a lot of sacrifices, whether it's for your body, for your well-being, whatever it is. It's little by little building blocks, and just adding in. Well, at first it's just the judo part, and then you add in, well, maybe you're going to be having to cut a little bit of weight, so you got to try it a little bit, and then maybe you're going to have to start going to a sports psychologist or writing down your goals. And it's kind of stacking on top of each other little by little. If you throw everything in all at once, you'll chase people off really, really quickly. Some people, over 6 months, you can slowly introduce all that stuff. And sometimes it takes people 5 years to slowly introduce all those different levels of what really goes into being an elite athlete.
Yeah, that is a very interesting consideration, the building blocks approach, because as you said, if you try to push everything at once, not everyone is ready for that. Some people, as you said, they have this already part of their DNA, so they will accept and deal with this. But other people, they just can't. Not because they don't want, it's because they're not ready. So you have to build those blocks, as you said.
Right.
But one thing that is interesting that I've noticed also is, and I talked to Jimmy Pedro, I talked to other judokas in this show, is that most of the people that succeed, at least in judo, they have some common characteristics when it comes to this mental toughness and this approach of going all the way in. And he even mentioned Travis, he mentioned Ronda Rousey, Kyla. All these athletes, they have a lot of things in common, which is they go all the way in. And most of the time, they already have this desire to overcome all those obstacles. When you are teaching your athletes, do you see this right away, or sometimes you got surprised that you're like, well, I don't think that this person has what it takes, but then this proves you wrong,
Right. I'd say about 90% of the time, I can see it right away, at least the start of it. About 90% of the time. There's about that 10% of the time where there's somebody that'll completely surprise you, where it's all of a sudden it just clicks. And it doesn't happen very often, but especially obviously with kids when they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, it's kind of, you got all the outside factors where it's everybody else is their friends at school, their parents. There's tons of different people from different walks of life in their life at that point that are really directing them in one direction or another. So it's kind of hard to at that age determine if they're going to be able to go on and do well. Some kids you'll be able to tell right away, but it's really difficult with older teens once they build the building blocks of judo and everything. It's pretty easy to tell whether they can go far or they're gonna crash and burn really quickly, because you'll be able to see, well, if this person's talking about how, oh, they can't win, they're never going to be able to do it, obviously that's a huge red flag. Where if they already in their head this early on in the journey already have an expectation that they're not going to be able to do it, it's going to be very difficult to dig them out of that hole and pull them back up on top. And then you have other people that are the complete opposite, where they're overly cocky, where where they think that where they're a couple of years into judo and haven't gone and done anything at any big tournament, and they're already pointing out people on the circuit and all their mistakes and what they could be doing and what they couldn't be doing, that they're not doing this, they're not doing that, they could beat them. I've seen complete drastic differences, and there's somewhere in that middle that usually works out the best.
That yeah, I've seen some interesting cases, and there is also those the ones that are extremely natural. They learn really fast. They are kind of gifted, but they are not really, they don't care about training. They don't have discipline.
Right.
They lack discipline, right? They are talent, but they lack discipline, which is is an interesting problem to have, because you see someone with so much capacity and gift, and you're like, come on, just do a little of discipline, you can go places, right?
Right. And coming up as like a kid and as a young athlete and a teenager and everything, I remember seeing, because I was an athletic kid, but I don't want to say judo came naturally. Like I played a lot of sports and stuff like that, but judo wasn't something that I just automatically got right away. There were tons of techniques and tons of different things that were taught. I just couldn't get it. And I remember the kids that were super natural and would train once a week. Meanwhile, I'm training multiple times a day, every day of the week. And one of these kids that comes once a week will come in and be able to keep up with me or whatever it is. And it's like, if you just came to more practices and actually did something, you'd be able to take over your division. It's insane the amount, like I've noticed being a kid, being a coach, the people that are usually the most naturally athletic, or I should say naturally gifted in judo, are the ones that reach high peaks very quickly and then have a very basically they're in a position where they think that, oh, well, I'm good enough already, and just kind of quit from there, because they didn't have to put in that work and think it should be easy for everybody. And those are the same people that years and years later will be like, well, I could have made an Olympic team, or I could have made a world team, but you didn't, because you didn't stick through it. Yeah. And there's people like that everywhere.
And you as a coach, now a tricky question. Do you prefer to work with gifted athletes that really doesn't care, or do you prefer to work with that hard worker that is not so gifted?
I would much rather work with the hard worker that's not as gifted. I feel like the hard worker that's not as gifted is more willing to give you 100% as far as everything goes, with their listening, their commitment, their extracurriculars, where instead of going out and doing stuff on the weekends, they're putting in the time in the weight room, and they're doing their cardio, and they're doing their extra stuff. The person that's talented will more than likely never do any of that extra stuff, and they'll end up falling behind. So I like working. I like developing athletes. I think it's very important as a coach to be able to take a kid or take someone that's never done judo before and be able to create them. I think it's very important to being a good coach. If you can't take an athlete that is either young or doesn't know anything and instill the judo knowledge and their athletic personality. I think if you can't do that and you just take an athlete that's natural and or has done judo for years and be able to take someone and add a little bit to them, I really honestly feel like you're not a true coach if you can't work with those people as well that are on the lower levels that you bring up. It's a lot different. It's a different feeling. It's a different feeling of accomplishment that you can take someone that's never done judo before and make them into a fantastic judo athlete rather than taking someone that's already a good judo athlete and just adding to them.
Yep, I fully agree with you on that for sure. Now, this is a question that I usually ask a lot of the judokas that come to the show because I'm just curious to see the different perspectives. Why do you think that the U.S. judo team still haven't really reached its potential when it comes to the international level, Olympics or even World Championship? We are not on top five, for example. Um, we
Right.
sometimes we get there with Kyla Harris. You know, it happens once in a while, but we don't keep that
Right.
momentum because I'm originally from Brazil, and Brazil has a great judo team, and we are always getting
Oh
there.
yes.
What do you think is missing in USA Judo to achieve that?
I know usually people are gonna, and this is, I know everybody says this right off, and I agree with it partially. Everybody always says the financial, there's no money, people don't have the funding. What's the draw to doing it if you're paying out of pocket? The
There's
way
no money.
I
There's
look
no
at
money
it,
in Brazil. We are a poor. Brazil
right,
is even a poor
right.
country for that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The way I look at it is, yeah, it would it would help tremendously if there was money in it and whatever else. But as a whole, if with the amount of people we have willing, and I don't want to say the amount of people, but with the people that we have willing to fund themselves to go to competitions, at least for a while, because we have probably like, I'd say 5 athletes that are at least funded mostly or partially or whatever. But I think as a whole, it's that we're all separated. I think we're all segregated. I think everybody thinks they have the right answer. Um, whatever team, whatever coach, I think everybody thinks that they know what the way is and they want to have their hand in the barrel as far as I was the one to do this or whatever it is. I think realistically, if everybody just kind of pulled everything together and we actually had the ability to have a national coach for cadet, a national coach for junior, and a national coach for senior that really knew our athletes, that we'd 100% be able to get to that stage. We don't have a true Olympic training center anymore, really. Technically we have one, but we don't have any athletes there. So we don't have, except for the one national camp that we really do a year, we don't have any any facility that we all meet up in and have multiple camps a year. The one that probably draws the most is US Open in Florida, that every year a lot of people end up going to, but even to that extent, it's one time a year. The people that are going internationally never have the time to work with the coaches that are coaching them in the international scene. So every tournament, every international tournament, there's a different coach that is going to coach our best athletes. There's never a point where someone really gets to know these athletes and learn the best way to coach them, learn what they need before their matches, what they need during their matches, the help that they need after their matches, between their matches. Nobody really gets to learn that because we don't have anybody consistent to do so. And and realistically, once we get our athletes into the international scene, and there's a coach that's out there coaching them through these matches, the coach in the chair isn't able to do anything for them on the mat as far as judo goes. So they have to be able to know the athletes and make them the most comfortable that they can before their matches and in between their matches. But we don't have the ability to bond with the coaches like to that extent.
Yeah, sometimes you meet the coach like on the day of the competition.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's crazy. I know I don't want to, this might sound bad, but I'd rather have nobody in my chair than have someone in my chair that doesn't know me at
Yeah,
all.
that's crazy.
I would feel way more
You,
comfortable.
you see, for example, the Japanese team, how there's a huge bond between the athletes and the coach, to the point that they finish, they hug, they cry together. It's like, wow, that's so cool. And you probably,
Yep.
I'm not sure if you've been in Japan training with them, but you feel that when you watch those camps with,
Yep.
and it shows the results, right? Japan is number one for a reason.
That's for sure. Definitely. And that's what and a lot of people will say, well, we need more technical coaches. We need our best Olympic athletes to be coaching. But realistically, I think the support system is something that's extremely lacking. And obviously, it's been proven that we have athletes that have the ability to do big things on the international scene. But I think as a whole, nobody's a team. People don't work together. There's no bond there with the coaches, the athletes. So I think building that up and being able to
And we
have,
know it works, right? Because, for example,
yeah,
when Travis was medalist, Jimmy was on his coach, and they were working together for a long time.
exactly, right, exactly. We know that the U.S. can do it. It's just a matter of what people have to look at. What worked there? Why did it work? And I think athletes like Travis and Kayla had immense trust in Jimmy and would do anything he said.
Exactly.
And at this point, as a whole, there's not a coach that athletes have like that as far as national coaches being able to work with all the athletes go.
That would be a great goal for you to pursue as a coach, and to
Yes.
change this. And I'm pretty sure that this is something that you envision, and you're gonna fight
Yeah,
for.
for sure. I'd love to get into coaching with USA Judo and try to help and change some of these things that I think as a whole would uplift the judo community as a whole. And I think I have a lot of good ideas that could help. But it's just a matter of getting everybody to work together on it. And one person can't do it by
When you
themselves.
were part of the USA judo team, did you have like a stable coach all the time, or it was changing all the time?
It was kind of changing all the time. I had one coach that he doesn't coach with the U.S. team anymore, but his name was Brett Wolf, and he went to a lot of the competitions that I competed at during that time period, and he actually coached a lot of the teams. Just so happened to during that year probably, and he was a fantastic coach for someone that had coached me 4 times at an event. He just made you feel so comfortable and motivated and would I remember actually that trip in Belgium I was talking about earlier. He was one of the coaches on the trip, and because it was kind of in the middle of nowhere where you had to drive to a store. And I remember it was a whole team of girls, and I remember a couple of the girls needed some things and food and drinks and whatever else because we didn't have anything. And he ended up somehow getting a ride from some random person in Belgium store to get us all stuff that we needed for training camp. And but that's the type of coach that we realistically need. Someone that even if they don't they can't give you the judo advice just out of nowhere. They don't have the time out of the competition, but they can make you feel comfortable and do whatever they can to get you to that point during
Yeah.
that competition day or that training camp or whatever it is. And
And
now,
you feel that right now with your athletes, right? Because you have this relationship with them, and you are talking to them. So every time that you are on their corner, there is a relationship there that sometimes even just by the way you look at, they know what you want,
Right.
right? And it's impossible to have this if you don't have a relationship.
Right. Right. It's and it takes a while to develop that trust and that confidence in each other, that if I were to say something, that person's going to take it fully to heart and actually do their best to try it or do it, and vice versa with the athlete being able to trust the advice being given, because it's the way I look at it is, if some random person off the street that I met twice told me this is the best thing to do for your business, I'm going to take it as light as I think I should take it. I'm not going to take full advice on it, because I
Hmm.
don't know the person. I don't know what they're doing, what they expect. So it's a tough
Yeah,
thing to gather.
yeah. No, I think those are excellent points, and I think that that you were in both sides, and now as a coach and a business owner, you have this vision. I really hope that you can positively influence, so that at some point we can have more Olympic athletes reaching the top five. That would be nice to have. Um, I think that when it comes to infrastructure, we always talk about money, money, money. But as I said, there are other countries around the globe that has way less money than U.S. and they do well. So I'm not really sure if money is the answer.
Right, right. I agree. It'd be nice to be able to get funding and have all of our top athletes, or one athlete in every weight class, be funded, but it stems deeper than just the money. I honestly strongly believe that it's as a whole, that it starts with the team, and it starts with being able to work together.
You said that you also coach wrestling at your school, right? So, were you a professional wrestler in the past?
I ended up I wrestled. I started wrestling when I was about 9 years old, and I did it all the way up through the time when I made a world team for judo. So basically, I stopped because the high school wrestling season, the commitment to that was too much, because my main sport was judo. So I kind of knew that I couldn't fully commit to wrestling, and I still practiced here and there just to help my judo. But um, I only stopped wrestling because I wanted to pursue judo to its fullest extent. Um, and I I wrestled for a long time. I wrestled with multiple clubs. I wrestled at tons of tournaments, like big New England tournaments, and Eastern Nationals, and uh, big national dual teams. And at the time when I was wrestling, like obviously girls wrestling is starting to come out really highly. It's the fastest growing sport in the country. At the time, it was probably me and one other girl in my state that wrestled. So I always wrestled boys. I might have wrestled a girl one time in a tournament, and that was about it. So it was me wrestling the boys, and I always enjoyed it, but I knew that I wanted to actually just do judo.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to say. Your love is really judo. That's
Yeah.
where your main love is. Do you feel, since you did both sports, that wrestling in US is bigger than judo?
Oh yes, definitely. I talk with people about this all the time, that because obviously in the United States wrestling's huge. So people that don't haven't done judo or haven't done the research on it think that wrestling as a whole in the world is such a more prestigious sport, and I have to explain to them that around the world, judo is the sport. We
Yeah.
went to I went to France a couple months ago, and it's just every television. There's just highlights of, and it was during World Championships for judo. So we'd go to a store, and there'd be a TV with judo on, It's just people don't understand that it's a lifestyle and a culture for majority of other countries in the world,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in the US just not. It's just something that people don't take to, whether it's I think the real comparison is that judo's a lot more like high class, I guess you could put it. It's a lot more professional. Like you watch a judo tournament, like an international like Grand Slam or something like that, and it's very very professional.
Yes,
I
it is.
go to a wrestling tournament and people are all over the place and crazy. It's a complete difference. So I think that judo is something that people don't take to the culture. They don't like the professionalism. They don't like being they don't like rules. So they don't like having to walk onto a mat in a dojo and bowing. They
Yeah.
don't just
I
things like
think
that.
it's beautiful. I love it. In I do both judo and jiu-jitsu, and I love jiu-jitsu, but there is something about judo that I just find very artistic.
Yes.
It's just beautiful to watch. Because in jiu-jitsu you can stall a lot, so you can stay on the same position for minutes without even moving, and it happens a lot. But in judo is way more action, is more
Right.
dynamic, and the throws are just like beautiful to see.
Oh yeah. Judo is one of the most complicated things that I remember as a kid thinking that just just looking at certain techniques and being like, oh, that's kind of easy. But when you get older and you start adding those different perspectives and different techniques, different movements and grips and whatever else, it's one of the most complex
It
things
is.
that I could only compare it to like the level of like a rocket scientist as far as what it actually gets into.
It's super complicated, and I talk about this in the past. I feel like the learning curve. I talked about this with Cotton Brown when he was on the show. The learning curve for judo is way steeper. It takes way more time for you to dominate one single throw. Imagine
Right.
all the throws that they have out there. So just for you to say, yeah, this one I'm good at it, it takes years.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it takes like I think I remember I think I listened to the Colton Brown show and I remember you guys were talking about like you in jiu-jitsu you drill something and you might be able to hit it in that
Yeah.
class. In judo you it might take 6 months to be able to throw that one technique
Yeah.
that you've been working on, and it's just so much more difficult to actually get better, feel like you're getting better, I should say, because you're
Exactly. Feel that you get it.
feel like
And
that
that's the
that's
challenge I think sometimes for the coach to talk to their students that are young and are learning, say, hey, it takes time, be patient, right?
right there's because obviously everybody's into baseball, soccer, football, whatever it is, and I guess especially people not understanding judo quite as much in the United States, parents with their kids will 6 months into judo be like, well, I feel like my kid is kind of at a standstill and they're not really getting better. And it's like, well, first of all, you don't you don't understand how hard it is to get better. It's easy to get faster in running because all you got to do is test yourself and run quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And judo is such a more uh,
Oh,
a
so many more variables. So many more
oh,
variables. It's crazy.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Skyler, this was such an amazing conversation. I thank you very much for you to take the time to record this, during a Friday evening, night for you already. So I appreciate your time. Good luck on your dojo. Good luck on your coach career. Very good to see you doing well, and stay strong and inspiring other people.
I will. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, everyone, that's a wrap for today's episode. Stay tuned. We have more to come.